2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and being a producer of Wrestle Massacre as well as Inside Movies Galore, I am David Streggy, and welcome to Delusions of Grandeur. Enjoy the reviews. I certainly did. Well, I know that was kind of a long intro, but it's something I made up for the Delusions of Grandeur. But we've kind of like crossed hairs over channels from time to time, so it kind of works for this channel. But thank you for coming back with us. We are covering some franchises here, and I want to welcome you guys to the show. My name is David Streggy, and this is the crew. So I'm going to hand this over to my good friend Jake here. He has an idea of what movie he has subjected us to this week. Why don't you let us know?
Hi, hello everyone. This week will be discussing the 2003 film by Jesse Dillon, continuing the epic saga of Jim Levinstein and his family and friends in American Wedding. It's the wedding of Jim and Michelle and the gathering of their families and friends, including Jim's old friends from high school and Michelle's little sister. Like I said, directed by Jesse Dillon, written as always by Adam Hers, starring our intrepid cast of Jason Biggs as Jim, Allison Hannigan as Michelle, Eugene Levy as Jim's dad, Thomas Ian Nicholas as Kevin, Eddie K. Thomas as Paul, Sean William Scott as Stifler, Molly Cheek as Jim's mom, and bringing into the cast January Jones as Cadence, Michelle's little sister, and Fred Willard and Deborah Rush as their rather uptight parents, along with Eric Allen Kramer as Bear and a handful of other folks. We have got, and then of course, Justin Isfeld and John Cho show up once again, this time credited, although just given their actual names. Strangely enough, Oz is nowhere to be found. And we might get to that when we get to it, but that was one of the weird things. But anyway, just a word before we launch into it. One, we lost a legend last week. David Lynch passed away. In honor of him, we will be covering one of his movies next month, so look forward to that. And just to be honest, I almost didn't come on tonight. There is shit going down that I'm just really not happy with. And I just want to, this is a very escapist film. I'm going to do the best I can to keep it light. My apologies to anyone who tunes in who's feeling the same way I am. I'm just going to say that at the top. But then I'm going to do the best I can to keep this light, because this is a fun movie and it's a fun franchise, and I think we can have some fun with it. So we'll start around the room with Tammy. Is this your first time with this movie, and what are your initial thoughts?
I know I've watched it before, because like I said, we watched it on the other channel, but it's been a little bit, not real long, but um, it was fun. They all are. They're all fun, I was kind of disappointed that yes, we did not see Oz. I don't know what that why he wasn't there with all the other guys, but because I've liked him in the other two. Um, but they're definitely everybody is up. Well, especially Stifler's up to his normal antics. I even made a comment to David that I don't know how the actor doesn't bust up laughing at times with some of the stuff he does. Yeah.
Well, Stifler was definitely on high antics in this one.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I said I don't know how he does it. How he keeps a straight face to do some of the crap he does.
Oh, there were outtakes.
But yeah, it was a fun watch, So I guess we'll go from there.
Well, apparently there was a deleted scene where Jim says Oz and Heather are in Spain. So that is a fair explanation. It is just interesting that they decided not to. Heather and Vicky being absent makes sense. Oz is more of a stretch, I think. So it's interesting. And I do miss Jessica. She's fun. But anyway, how about you, Dave? Obviously not your first time.
No, definitely not my first time. We covered it not too long ago on the Delusions of Grandeur channel. But it's I guess been a little bit, but I guess I'm okay with this one. Although I do think it's rather tame compared to some of the others. I feel like the franchise was kind of choked and strangleholded because they let them get away with too much in the first one. So I feel even though I think they did okay with the antics and the jokes and whatnot, I almost feel like they were smothered by what they could have been able to do, So I don't know. It's okay. It's this one's meant to be like the lampoon version of Father of the Bride.
Yeah,
and, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see that.
Or like a Meet the Parents version of Father of the Bride. I don't know.
Well, I'd say this is probably closer in form and tenor to Meet the Parents, because that is a big part of the plot. But yeah, but I see what you're saying. I think.
But I was entertained by it for the most part. I mean, the conversation between Sarah and Eugene Levy's character was a little bit comical, but in any case, life goes on.
Okay. All right. And how about you, Brandon?
Well, I would say this is not my first time seeing this film. Actually, this is the one I have seen more than any except for the first one, believe it or not.
Ding.
Apparently, I was right. I was told I was correct. No, I'm doing some work behind the scenes for the Inside Movies Galore stuff, which we timed it right. any case, with that being said, to me, this is my least favorite of the series, oddly enough. I even consider it weaker than some of the spin-offs on there. We were missing Chris Klein and a lot of the associated characters that came along with him. According to, I mean, Kim and I were looking it up, trying to figure it out. The surface rumor was that he was too busy with we are, what was it? We are soldiers. We were soldiers. We were soldiers at the time, because the filming was apparently taking place around the same time as that. According to Chris Klein, he was never asked to return for this one.
Right.
Which is kind of sad, really. You'd think that they'd want that. But in a way, I guess you could say it's also saving money, because if you don't get him back, then you're also saving out on having to ask several other actresses back. So, hey.
Right.
But yeah, to me, I thought that the writing was kind of sloppy here. There are a couple of scenes here that I thought were very lazy. I thought that Stifler was played more over the top than he has in any of the movies in the series. I'll have to double check American Reunion. I don't remember. It felt like overall, it felt like the laziest effort. Yet it felt like one that should feel like the best of the series. Yet me is my least favorite of the series.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Now, for me, this is the one that I think I saw in theaters. I'm not sure on the second one, and I'm not sure on Reunion, although I don't think I did. But I think I saw this one. And as I commented on the message feed, this song, the movie kicks off. They always have a good needle drop at the beginning that sets the tone, but this one kicks off with the song Laid by James. And first of all, the opening lyrics to that song are friggin' hilarious and not work safe. But Dave, you mentioned Meet the Parents. For me, it was a lot like Meet the Parents in that holy shit, they started off with those kind of lyrics. It's like, because that one I think started off with the original song that that was just kind of funny. It was mocking and funny. But anyway, but much like the Rocky franchise is associated with Eye of the Tiger, which didn't show up till what, the third movie?
Right.
This franchise, I feel like this song is the mascot song for the franchise, but it doesn't show up till the third movie. So it's like, I don't know if that was intentional, but it is funny to me. But I think this probably was one of my favorites when it was out. I liked the story. Obviously, I liked Jim and Michelle getting together. But I think I'm not totally in disagreement with the idea that this time around I was much less impressed than I was. Partly it's because I don't know for certain if I've seen this cut of the film before. I'm watching, of course, the unrated cuts as I'm going through. And there was definitely stuff that I did not see in the theater. I can tell you that. But I feel like the whole bachelor party scene, I feel like there were scenes I had never seen before in that. And I do think the bachelor party scene did feel a little sloppy in this version.
Yeah, I have my own thoughts on that scene. So yes.
Yeah. But I think now, one thing that I will say, the movies keep handing off to different directors. Interestingly enough, the director of this one, Jesse Dillon, is apparently Bob Dylan's son, or one of his sons. And he's done a lot of music videos. But one of his few features that he's known for was Kicking and Screaming, which was not a great movie either. So it could well be that he just didn't really have necessarily the chops to really make this a tight film. He is good with visuals, and there are some decent visuals here. But anyway, point being, the movie is uneven for me. I fully agree that I always felt Sean William Scott was way over the top in this one. And supposedly that was not entirely an accident. He wanted to go all in, and they encouraged him. And this might have been a case of a director with a stronger hand could have saved the day, I guess. But I still like the movie a lot. And I still think it's a better movie in most ways than the second one, but not on the same level as the first one. But anyway, we'll launch into it. One other thing I'll just say right out of the gate is Fred Willard is underused in this movie. He is criminally underused. But anyway, we will launch into it. The movie starts, as I said, with Lade playing over the credits. And we go into this scene where Jim and Michelle are having this fancy romantic dinner where he gets a call and his dad is driving and tells him that I have the ring because Jim was going to propose and his dumbass kept putting the ring everywhere he could. You know the idea, you want to put it in a really safe place so you won't lose it. And sometimes you find a place that's so safe you forget where it is. That's what Jim does. Because Jim. And because there are a few set pieces they recycled from the first two movies. And one of them is an embarrassing scene involving Jim's dad and Jim in a compromising situation. Basically, he's trying to be clever. He's hidden the ring box under the napkin. And he and Michelle are talking about spicing things up or whatever. And he's like, why don't you use your napkin? And she's like, oh, I don't need a napkin. And she goes under the table and starts doing stuff. And of course, Jim's dad comes in, sits down in her seat, and is just talking, just totally unaware of what's going on under the table. And Jim is very, very aware of what's going on under the table. And there's this part where Levy, where Jim's dad mentions what's going to happen, and we hear this bam, like Jim, obviously Michelle hit the table with, apparently she hurt her hand because they kept having to do take after take after take, and she was originally hitting it with her hand, and they gave her a mallet instead. So it wasn't her head that they smacked on the table, but that's what it was in the story, of course.
Apparently, Jim had forgotten the wedding ring, or at least the engagement ring at home.
Well,
so
again,
he was on the way.
He thought it was in the box, but it wasn't. And there was a scene where Jim's parents found the ring, but they cut it. They figured it. And there were a few that they cut for pacing, and it makes sense. But basically, he of course gets up and for whatever reason forces Jim to get up. And Jim's already up in a way that the rest of the restaurant didn't need to see. And his dad is like, oh, whoa. And then, of course, Jim reaches under the table and helps Michelle out. And everyone is like, oh. But he has, he proposes, and of course she says yes, and of course his dad beams and talks about that's my son, and all that, stuff he does. And then we go into, the rest of the story, and
they make it very apparent that he still has a boner.
yes, they make that very apparent, especially when his pants fall down again at the end of the scene. But at any rate, we see some of the early goings on. We see Jim telling Kevin and Finch, and they congratulate him. And then of course as he leaves, Finch is like, well, he's a dead man,
Well, and Stifler is not invited to anything.
Oh yeah, no. Stifler, of course, shows up uninvited and unannounced at the wedding party, at the engagement party, which strangely enough, the MILF guys were either invited to or crashed, but they're there too. But Stifler shows up. We see him driving a bus. Later on, we see he's also the assistant coach for the football team. So as we mentioned before, he basically was that guy that peaked in high school, he shows up, he assumes it's a graduation party and just goes in being himself. And of course that leads to awkward situations, and Jim's first meeting with Michelle's parents involves Stifler, a cake, and their dogs. So yeah, can visualize that. And before long, we find out that Jim is forced to tell Stifler, you're not invited, which Stifler is not pleased. But he, while getting the football team riled up about, how Jim sucks donkey dick, he leans in and tells Jim, I can dance, because he knows Jim can't dance for shit. So basically his in is to teach Jim to dance. So that's kind of the beginning. Does anyone have anything they want to mention to this point? Anything they want to?
Well, I mean, I feel kind of for Stifler. I don't really feel for this version of Stifler because he's worse. Than, if it could be said, he's actually worse than the freaking other versions of him on there. Right. But they've used Stifler for the longest time because of his money and access. And now that he's no longer, of course, valuable to them, they drop him until he's got something that they want again. So yeah. I do feel for him. I also understand why he wouldn't be invited to the wedding. Right. But, they've been together this long. It just feels wrong not to invite him at this point.
Well, yeah. It does. But when you see Jim and him dancing together, that's kind of hilarious.
And it is pretty clear that the main reason he's not invited is Michelle doesn't want him there. It's and she, I guess you could say, in fairness, he never let her use him, and she never really tried. So they don't have that history. So for her to say, yeah, I don't want him there, isn't as bad as if Jim was doing that. But yes, it is a good point, though, that it's kind of like he could have fought for him and said, hey, you know what? If it weren't for his party, we might have never hooked up, which is the point, of course, that Stifler makes too, when he's reacting in the moment. He's like, this guy, what was it? He's basically going off just like, this guy hooked up at a party I threw. He's marrying that girl. And it's like, yeah, he does have a point. Yeah. But anyway, So, like I said, that scene also does introduce Michelle's parents. And we learn very quickly a few things about them, or at least this is my read on them. One of them is that Michelle's mother has her father completely whipped. That seems apparent. They also seem to have this idea that Michelle is their little princess. They actually I thought one of the funnier parts in the movie was just shortly after their introduction, where or a little later on, I can't remember exactly when, but Michelle's parents are with Jim's parents, and I think it was at the wedding, actually, now that I think about it. And her mother says, I can't, yeah, because I think it was the wedding, because I think she says, I can't believe our little girl's going to be a woman tonight, or something to that effect. And Jim's parents look at each other like, yeah, it's like they know better. And it's like, it's one of those things where you can kind of see, and it's clear that everyone knows that Michelle's a kinky little freak. Like, everyone knows it, including her sister apparently knows this. They apparently are open with each other about these things, but her parents are totally in the dark. And it's like, it is kind of funny, but again, this was one area where they really underutilized Fred Willard. He is a master deadpan comedian, and he and Levy have a long history of doing films together. They really could have leaned more into that character, and I'm disappointed that they didn't. But and again, you know, they meet Jim when he's in a very compromised state, obviously.
I don't think you could get more compromised than what he was at that moment.
Not much more, no. Not much more. And again,
he always gets, he just, I feel bad for him because he always ends up in the
most awkward positions.
Yeah, and then, and you know, it's not, it's never what it looks like, you know, and it's
no.
And back to the point of why Stifler wasn't invited. This kind of thing is why Stifler wasn't invited, because he has this complete lack of a filter, for one, and a complete lack of most social graces. Like, he does understand some things, and when he's trying to woo Cadence later, we see that he can, if he tries really hard, he can curb his impulses, but normally he just doesn't. And yeah,
I don't think they gave him a filter at all in this movie.
Not much. But anyway, so before long, well, we have a couple of things going on here. We have the little bit of recon where Jim's trying to find out what he can do for Michelle, where they find out about the dress she wants and all that stuff. We see the early dancing lessons where Stifler is trying to help Jim there. And we see some other stuff going on. If I skip anything, y'all just throw it out there. I'm not going to worry about hitting all the beats. One of the big ones, of course, before too long, although it's not right away, but before too long, is where we're introduced to Cadence, Michelle's younger sister, played by January Jones. She is a much more conventionally pretty sister, and they play up that angle when both Stifler and Finch get the hots for her pretty much right away. And they kind of switch roles. They find out that like Finch overhears that she's looking to cut loose, and get a little crazy, and Stifler finds himself thinking that the nice route is the one to take. And so they end up you get a boorish, largely unfiltered Finch and Stifler and an Ascot trying to be polite and glomping onto Michelle's parents and just being as helpful as he can be. And what did y'all think about that sort of trading places part of the plot?
It was really weird because it was weird to see Vince acting like that. He's normally just so, cool.
Although later they make up for it down the line when he calls him a motherfucker and
oh yeah,
the shipbreaker he calls him a grandmother fucker.
You're skipping all the way to the end.
Yeah,
but yeah,
and as I was saying,
yeah,
it's really different to see them switch like that because Vince is normally so calm and cool, collected type, he's just goes with the flow. He's just, there. And to see him go and act stupid,
Well, he doesn't really act stupid. Like, I don't know that Finch could act stupid. He's clearly still an intelligent person. He just basically drops the filter and acts rude and boorish and just, yeah.
He acts
I
like,
guess you could say it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
To me, he's acting stupid,
Yeah.
I think, in a way, because we've seen Stifler put on an act before,
Right.
not to this level, where he's doing it constantly, but we've seen him do it in the other movies where he'll put on an act in order to try and, get into somebody's pants.
Right.
But not quite to the level he's done this time. But for Finch, it is kind of entertaining to see him do the Stifler act to try and get the attention. I think that is funny.
He even calls himself the Finchmeister, and Stifler does not like that. That was kind of amusing there. But yeah, you're right. Like in the other two, we had brief scenes where Stifler acts all real friendly and charming and clearly with an agenda, and he ends up paying for it. The first time with the pale ale, the second time getting pissed on. This one does play a longer game, but they still go through those beats. Because in his pursuit of cadence, he ends up at one point eating dog shit. So,
that is probably the grossest of the ones I have seen. It's the one that made me actively want to gag. Because
it's funny. I was doing exactly the same thing that Finch was doing.
Yes.
Right before he quit.
I thought I was gonna gag on that part too. I'm like, man.
Right.
It's because the other two, they didn't drag them out. The jokes were there. It was a little bit more dragged out with the peeing thing, but in a way, it didn't overstay its welcome. This one overstayed its welcome. It just stuck with it.
And
I did enjoy the moment where they went down to Vegas to try to find Michelle's dress.
They didn't go to Vegas. That would have been a long trip.
I thought that's where they went.
No, they went to Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that would have been a long ass trip if they went to Vegas.
Well, and they were looking for this Leslie person, and I don't think they realized that this Leslie person was a guy.
Right. Well, they had no idea. And actually, that was one of the major things that goes on kind of somewhere in the middle of the film is again, Finch had done recon. He had come back with the dress that Michelle wanted. He said it was at a shop in Chicago. Jim endeavors to make it happen for her. problem is they get there too late. The shop is already closed, and they manage to find out the name of the person they're looking for and a rough idea of try a bar downtown, like basically very, very broad strokes of you look, just basically go bar hopping. They all split up and go looking at the bars. And we don't really follow any of them except Stifler, who actually chooses the right bar. He goes in, he sees a cute girl, starts putting the moves on her. She says, hey, I have a friend who'd like you, whatever. And he goes up to the bar, he's hanging out. And then she comes up with this big dude. And, they kind of do a little bit of back and forth. And then Stifler's like, what gives? Where's the chick? Where, starts showing his ass. And that's where Bear, this guy's Bear, says, you need to take another look around. And that's when Stifler realized he, of all people, had walked into a gay bar. And they, basically, the other guys show up and they're like, hey, Stifler, how'd you get up the nerve to come in here? And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. And then, they say what they were doing, but Stifler, being Stifler, shoots them in the foot, basically. Mouths off, says some stuff he shouldn't have. Pisses Bear off, and he's like, you need to go. You guys you need to go. And we can tell that Leslie's right there, but it ain't happening. They're not getting the dress. As they're leaving, we see a dance scene getting ready to start. When then Stifler goes out, tears up the floor. Bear joins them, and they end up doing a dance off. And by the end of it, they're best friends somehow. And
they sure go through a lot of 80s music during that.
They sure do, yes. That's a good little 80s montage there. And
Stifler's got some skills.
Yeah, so Bear gives him a card and says, I do entertainment. Let me know when you need to do the bachelor party. And Leslie tells Jim, you got yourself a dress. So it works out in the end, So, we see Jim giving Michelle the news. She's super happy about it. And then her parents are finally willing to sit down and talk with Jim, one-on-one like he asked before. Because obviously he needs to make up for that not so good first impression. And basically, that all kind of brings us up to, I guess, the bachelor party. But before we do that, did anyone want to pause and talk about any of what we just went over?
I felt like the dance-off was almost as bad as the bachelor party scene, but not quite. It was amusing, which I will say that that one was amusing. At least I felt like it was a little bit too over the top, and it went on for a little bit too long. It's the way I feel like a lot of the jokes here. I feel like some of the jokes are very funny, but many of them went on too long. They didn't know when to stop.
See,
I can see that.
I think they should have edited the bachelor party and kept this scene in, and it would have been great. But
I kind of agree. I like the dance off a lot better than I like the bachelor party, and I think there was definitely the bachelor party went, I think, a little bit too long, and there was just a little bit too much unneeded stuff in it.
I didn't really ask at the top of it. I did say that I watched the unrated cut this time around. Do y'all know which cuts you watched?
No clue.
Okay. I'm not entirely sure what the differences are either, so I couldn't really necessarily say there.
I'm assuming I watched the unrated, so
it seems most likely movies like this, that tends to be where people tend to see them. But I couldn't swear to what what was added, except like I said, I'm almost sure several scenes in the bachelor party were either extended or added in that cut.
That bachelor party was way overextended. I don't remember the original theatrical cut, but
right,
it felt sloppy. It just that's the way it looked like to me, as sloppy filmmaking. It just felt like, hey, let's just do cut after cut of this.
Okay. So this says that this is the unrated version is the extended bachelor party and various additions to the pre-wedding scenes. That I'm a little less clear on what was added, the pre-wedding scenes, but yeah, I think I saw a few of the deleted scenes, and some of them would have fit the movie much better than what I think was thrown in for the unrated cut. But I didn't watch all of them. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to take the time to go to all the deleted scenes. But anyway, so now the infamous bachelor party. Now, granted, in a movie like this, especially when Stifler's involved, you're not having a bachelor party. It would have made little to no narrative sense not to have one. And the way they did it, where Stifler tried to plan it to where they could catch Jim alone, not realizing that he was trying to meet Michelle's parents unimpeded, and that when he told Stifler he would be alone, it was he should have known better, but he didn't, because Jim. But so we have that collision that we know is going to happen by the end of it. So there definitely is a lot of good reason to have the scene. Now, as far as the actual scene, Bear shows up with a couple of exotic dancers. He shows up with Fräulein Brandy and Officer Crystal, who I know Crystal was played by an actual playmate, Nikki Ziering. I'm not sure about Amanda Swiston, but I'm guessing that was... I'm not sure about her. But one of the bonus features I watched that was kind of fun was they focused on Ziering basically walking us through the premiere day, and it was cute. It was kind of fun, but she seems like a fun person. But the overall scene basically had Finch, Stifler, and Kevin show up early. Bear shows up with the girls. They don't hold back. They go ahead and have a party, even though Jim hasn't shown up yet. And most of the scene is just random vignettes. If I remember correctly, the original cut flowed much better than the unrated cut, if I'm remembering correctly. But it still is essentially a series of random vignettes that culminates in Kevin gets duct taped to a chair and stuck in a closet. Finch strips down and covers himself in chocolate for reasons. And that's when he sees a turkey in the oven, and he's like, guys, are we having dinner? And that's about when they realize, oh, wait a minute, Jim's not going to be alone after all. And they scramble to come up with some sort of an explanation for these people. Bear calls himself Belvedere, Mr. Belvedere, and goes around, has to walk carefully so that certain things aren't visible.
I did find that hilarious.
What's that? Y'all both talked at once.
Ass cheeks.
Right.
I did find that part hilarious. Okay, let me rephrase. I didn't like the bachelor party when they were all just playing with the strippers. Right. But once that part got done,
right,
when the parents got there, yes, it did have some very funny moments after that.
and that's the part where we find out that Fred Willard might be repressed, but apparently he has a little bit of something hidden from, when he gets whipped, he enjoys it quite a bit. It's like I said, Fred Willard could have done so much more with that scene. It's probably good they didn't spend too much time on it, but yes, I will say in the unrated cut, the whole bachelor party is a sloppily edited mess. I believe the original cut was better. I just can't remember it very well. But I agree. They could have definitely tightened that whole sequence up. They didn't need it to run on as long as it did. I think, though, that they probably had the same idea that these guys would have had. Holy shit, let's just have fun. I mean, that's my guess. But it did make for a weak point. But did anyone else have any thoughts on that before we move along?
Nope.
Oh, I did want to make one point back with the dance scene that I had forgotten to. I had to run over. Though I did feel like it went on it was a little bit too over the top. At least I will say that unlike the bachelor party, I felt like it did have a point. And it did show that Stifler does know what he's doing when it comes to the dancing.
Right.
So it did have at least a better point. I feel like the bachelor party, there were a lot of, first off, yes, I can actually, with a good edit, having maybe just a slight bit there where they're showing off just like for a moment, not like how long it did, that's fine. But, there was also a missed opportunity of dragging him out and having hilarity ensue out in public. But who knows what we would have lost.
Right. What was I going to say? I don't remember. But anyway, so I guess after that, really, we're kind of just getting into the run up to the wedding. Basically, we have Kevin and Stifler are continuing to each vie for Cadence's affection. There is a question. Actually, wait a minute. It might have been at the. It might have even been at the bachelor party. What was the part where they decided who was keeping the ring?
I think that actually was at the bachelor party because Stifler had come up with this whole thing like, yes, I had really thought that Jim would really like this sort of thing. And it was basically he made up the excuse, and Finch did not look good considering.
No.
So they gave the ring to probably the worst person possible to keep it.
Well, yeah, he made himself look good in front of the parents.
Well,
basically,
he made himself look good in front of Michelle's mother.
Well,
because it was very prevalent that all of a sudden, even though he was trying to get Caden's attention, he was also making sexual references to her mother, as if her mother was actually a sexual thing for a little bit.
Maybe. I don't think he was trying to get anything out of that. I think it may have come across a little in just his presentation, but
he just was trying to kiss ass to her to make.
Well, yeah, he was definitely kissing ass. He wanted to kiss Cadence's ass, so in a different sense. So he, so basically, just to back up a bit, so that is a small but notable plot point that we kind of skipped, and that is Jim, being Jim, is not the most decisive person in the world. I mean, that was essentially one of his major issues in the first two films, was his lack of decision making skills. So he didn't pick a best man. And Michelle's mother was going to, I believe it was her grandmother's ring that they wanted to use.
Correct. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
the grandmother's ring.
So obviously they wanted to be sure that the right person would have it. And actually, when she first proffered it up, I think Finch started to jump. And then Stifler swooped in and said, "No, you should get to know us all better," which was, in a way, very self-serving, but was also actually not terrible advice, especially coming from him. And she agreed. She was like, "That's a good idea. I'll get to know y'all better." So at the end of the bachelor party, where Stifler is really the only one that doesn't look like a freak, he basically decides that, well, your heart was in the right place, and I know who to give
If
the
you
ring
didn't
to.
know Stifler. No,
No.
he didn't look like a freak. But everyone who knew Stifler thought he looked like a freak in the preppy clothes.
Well, yeah. I mean, but you know what I mean. Like,
it's Jim's fault at the end of the day, because Jim never named a best man. And
right.
if he had named a best man, then it would never have gone to Stifler, because there's no way in hell Stifler would have been best man.
No. Jim
And if Jim would have stuck to his guns and not caved because he didn't know how to dance,
Shoot.
Stifler never would have been involved in the first place.
Matter of fact, it should have gone, the best man should have been Kevin for a couple reasons. One, Kevin, out of the ones that are left there, was probably the one he was closest to. And
right.
Two, it would have given Kevin something to do in the freaking movie.
Yeah, he didn't have a lot to do.
He got tied up, basically.
Right.
Hey, for that reason alone, if I were single, I'd be okay with it.
And Kevin just kind of was there for a lot of the movie.
Yeah, he definitely didn't have a huge amount to do, which is probably part of the reason why they opted not to worry about Oz, because they probably figured we don't really have enough room for all four of these guys to each have a major story. Which still, though, that still seems unfortunate. And it is unfortunate that Kevin doesn't have more to do. Kevin was never really my favorite of the bunch. Like, he's not my favorite of the bunch, but at least in this one, he doesn't do anything asshole-ish, so he comes off looking a lot better. But at any rate, so we get to this aforementioned scene where Stifler, to suck up to Michelle's parents, is helping watch the dogs while flirting with Cadence. And without paying attention, he accidentally flings the ring down with the treats. And then spends the rest of the afternoon following the dogs around, watching them like a hawk, to everyone's mystification. Finch is on to him and is hanging around watching just for his amusement. But, yeah. Meanwhile, we also are introduced to Jim's grandmother, his dad's mother, who is not the most friendly person.
Well, she's because she's not even Jewish.
Well, no, she's just clearly not a friendly person. Like, you can tell from that first scene where his dad is wheeling her through the hotel. She tells him, "Look, I'll be fine. But yeah, then Jim brings Michelle in and introduces her, and grandmother gets up and peers closely at her. It is a not Jewish, no wedding, and of course Michelle is heartbroken over the whole thing. kind of funny. Apparently, Alison Hannigan is part Jewish, but the way they did that was it sets up a major conflict that will need to be resolved by the end. We also see some other pre-wedding stuff. We get the introduction that they're introducing it for a reason about everything in the refrigerator. We've seen there's the scene where inexplicably, because in the commentary, Jason Biggs joked that Jim's region, as he called it, should have gotten star billing in the movie. He said he fought for it after the first movie. He definitely fought for it in the third movie. It's not, what happens arguably is not quite as embarrassing as what his dad caught him doing in the first one, and definitely not as painful as what happened in the second one. God, no. But he decides, for reasons known only to him, that he wanted to feel a bit draftier. And what's that?
I was just laughing.
And it ends up raining pubes in the kitchen, right into Jim's mother and Michelle's mother and the head caterer and a couple of other people. And it's very embarrassing.
A little disgusting and embarrassing, yes, but
yes.
How were they to know that it was from him?
Well, he was leaning out the window looking guilty. And the hair had to come from somewhere, I guess. But
they looked up as he was still flinging that mat around.
Right.
Out the window.
Who has an exhaust fan that takes the air directly in the kitchen? Usually the fans take the hot air out of the kitchen.
Right.
Yeah.
So I find that is one that I have a hard time suspending my disbelief for.
Yeah. It is strange. It is strange. I mean,
it's a stretch.
It is a stretch. I think that yes, if you may be right, if the direction of the air, if the convection currents were going in that direction, they probably would have had issues with the internal temperatures before Stifler came along and did what he did later. Yeah, that was that was one of the handful of things in the movie that definitely probably not the most realistic. Also, him doing that out of the blue without slicing himself to hell might be a little unrealistic too.
That one actually could have had so many other possibilities.
Yes.
Like, what would have happened if he ended up getting it stuck? And he had to get the EMTs in the hotel to do it as he's wandering around the hall with the cord dragging behind him. These are. I felt like this is a possibility that could have happened.
While I was shaving, the gerbil reached out and grabbed it.
I thought for sure once he started shaving that something was going to happen like that. Like he was going to get something caught or go a little too close and he start bleeding or this or that.
Right.
I thought I was waiting for something to happen there. And instead he's just shaving away and everything. And it's like, really? I thought something for sure would have happened there.
And I will harken back to the point made last week of when you have a quote unquote gross out comedy, you feel the need sometimes to up the ante. And this and the whole dog shit thing just were trying to up the ante.
That dog shit thing.
So basically back to that.
Do we have to?
That's
Stifler
almost
finally,
as bad as the eclairs that were made from the dog's cum and welder.
so Stifler finally finds the ring. It picks it up with the stuff around it, using one of those little paper things that they use at these events, and runs smack into Michelle's parents. And in a weird little bit of, honestly, greediness on her part, Michelle's mother insists on having the treat that Stifler apparently smuggled out of the kitchen. And to prevent her from, well, basically to preserve his facade, he ends up chowing down on it himself. He'd rather look like a stingy jerk than the alternative. And honestly, the fact that he did it to himself rather than letting someone else suffer, that is a small plus. But yeah, they did definitely drag that out. And it was pretty disgusting. Yeah.
Well, yeah, the father didn't have to keep asking, is it creamy? Is it this? Is it that? Is it this? Is it that?
Oh, Lord.
It's like, dude, shut up and let him go or something, man.
Is it fresh? Oh, it's so fresh. Which is true. Oh, man. Yeah. So let's move on. What's up? So we get also to Stifler making plans with Cadence for a little tryst. And she gets pulled away and unable to make the arrangement. But actually, yeah, wait a minute. I'm trying to remember the order here, because first he fucks up the cooler, and then there was the thing with the grandma. I think he messed up the cooler first, right?
Well, he went to go meet her,
Right.
and he was running late, and then Finch caught him, and
Yeah.
she was running late, and then she gets to see his true colors.
Yeah, there is that. Where
And that's he had already fucked up the cooler, but nobody knew it yet.
yeah, so he had gone down to the cooler, flipped a whole bunch of switches for no real reason other than just not giving a crap about anyone else, and grabbed a bottle of champagne. And yeah, I think that was when he ran into Finch, and he did this weird thing where apparently he thinks cows meow or something.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he really lets the mask fall for Finch, and unknown to him, but known to Finch and to us, Cadence is walking right up behind him, and it does not go very well for him at the moment.
They missed a oh, she's standing right behind me, isn't she? Joke.
Yeah. Well, they gave us that, just didn't say it, basically. He's like, how much of that did you see? And she does that weird, whatever the hell he was doing. That was supposed to mean milking, I guess. And it was kind of, yeah, it was embarrassing for him. And then that's where we find out that or shortly after that is where we find out that the refrigerator is screwed. That I think they said something to the effect of that the temperature, that the fans reset whenever it's disturbed or some such thing. And it was definitely disturbed because Stifler flipped all those freaking switches in addition to just walking in and taking the champagne. So all the flowers are ruined. Michelle's heartbroken. Everyone is pissed at Stifler. And Jim finally gives him his walking papers. Finally says, dude, that's it. You need to go. So, everyone's kind of down and in the dumps, and, Stifler's driving off angry, and he happens to go by the florist, figures out the name of the florist, and tracks her down and pounds on her door and tells her, look, you need to come fix the Band Geek wedding, or whatever. I think that's what he said, or the Jim Band Geek wedding. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, he tells her what he did. And she's like, even if I overlooked that this is the rudest thing anyone's ever done, it took my 4 assistants, what'd she say, a week, around the clock, 4 days, around the clock. There's no way to do it by tomorrow. It's impossible. And that's when he brings out that old chestnut. You don't score until you score. And yeah. And then, the next day we see this thing where Jim and Michelle walk in just completely flabbergasted because there's flowers everywhere. And we see the florist and Stifler supervising his football team, who he somehow, I guess, rounded up in the middle of the night and dragged them all there. And he's forcing them all to do this flower arrangement stuff. And actually turns it into a decent looking display, in the short time they had. And he takes, Cadence comes up, tells him, I'm kind of can't believe you did this or whatever. And she's like, I still think you're a jerk or whatever. And he's like, yeah, I know. He owns it. And then he gives her a flower and they have a little kiss. And that's, again, one of my favorite moments in this or any of the movies, where Michelle is just flabbergasted and she looks at Jim and she's like, Steve Stifler just gave a flower to a girl and meant it. This is huge. This is like watching monkeys learn to use tools for the first time. And I'm like, oh, she's not far off. But what do y'all think about that whole thing? I mean, again, there's a little suspension of disbelief in this too, but this is more in line, I think, with the kind of thing you expect from a wedding movie. And what do y'all think about that whole part?
I like the whole Stifler redemption arc in some ways. I feel like they tackled it a little wrong because it felt like a full 180 as it went. It really felt like almost an ADHD type decision. So at the end, but at the same time, I mean, it was kind of nice to see him actually try to do something nice and realize, okay, this girl I actually really like and want to actually do right for. So, I mean, I feel like there's a lot here that if it was done better, it would probably have made this my favorite of the movies. But they did a lot of ball dropping, both literal and figurative. Both literally and figuratively.
Right.
So that
did some ball shaving at least.
So that's that is like I said, it's a mixed feeling for me. I actually like the idea of trying to redeem him a little bit, especially. But when they decided to do caricature version of Stifler throughout the entire film, it was a little bit harder for me.
Yeah. I think he tones it down in this part, but you're right. It's like right up until then, But he does, he does. He finally realizes, I think, there's that, like, you could say it's like, what do you want to say? Like almost a moment of clarity or whatever. When he realizes, wait a minute, I screwed up so bad that Jim is telling me to go. And he's like, wow. And I think he does realize that he's gone too far if Jim of all people is just telling him, dude, you're out, It's like and putting his foot down, because Jim doesn't put his foot down. That's not his shtick. But yeah, anyone else have any thoughts on that before we move on to the follow-up to that?
I think it was cool that, that I think not only like what you said about Jim, but I think also he came to the realization that, he really did like Cadence,
Yeah.
that his feelings for her were more than just let's me get in her pants. I think he realized that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like nice to see that there was actually another side of him besides being an asshole.
Right.
So
I agree there.
Okay.
A lot of it was originally to get into her pants, but 3/4 of the way in, I think he actually realized he liked being around her, and it wasn't just showing just him being there to show up shitbreaker,
Right.
So I mean, at first it was competition, but then it was more like reality was setting in.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with it. I mean, like I say, I don't think it was a bad thing. I just feel like this is a movie that could have been handled more competently, and it would have been a lot better.
Right. All right. Well, speaking of the movies, less mature inclinations. We all knew this was coming. Oh, hey, Dustin.
Great timing.
We're up to the wedding.
Here, quite late, but we're here.
All right, Dustin. So, is this your first time watching American Wedding, and what are your thoughts on it?
Nope. My first time seeing this was because I liked American Pie 2 so much. When I first moved out of my house and started going to undergrad, I started picking up DVDs, and this was the first time I saw this was when I bought like the trilogy like DVD set. Like this was a new movie to me at the time, and I ended up enjoying it, about as much as the other ones. So I do like kind of some of the like life progression stuff in here for our characters, where it's not about they don't necessarily have selfish goals like as much anymore. Well, okay, Stifler does, but everybody's got their own things kind of more or less worked out, and it's all about like helping Jim through his wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So I did appreciate the again the really solid like through line of growth in our characters throughout this series. There is one joke I really, 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 really hate, and you can probably figure out which one. Like, yes, the dog thing. That was pretty powerful.
Yeah,
I think that's universal.
That was maybe the worst thing in any
Now
of
that
these.
is what I call the power of the dog.
I think we're all in agreement that scene was pretty shitty.
Not even as a joke. Oh my god. I mean, I have seen some really heinous stuff. Like, I have seen Necromantic, and that wasn't quite as gross as that.
Yeah.
Like, that movie made me uncomfortable, but it didn't make me kind of squirm like, no, quite as much as like the dog poop eating thing.
So one point that was made repeatedly about that scene and also the bachelor party scene and whatever was that this film very much would have benefited from tighter editing. Did you concur with that, or?
Well, the version I saw, I think I might have seen an extended version of it when I did my rewatch recently, because the bachelor party went on a lot longer than I remembered it.
Right.
So I think theatrically, some of that stuff was edited out.
Mm-hmm.
Although it's kind of hard to remember what was in the different versions, though. So I don't know if I can quite speak to that.
Right.
Like confidently, because I just don't remember what was extra.
Mm-hmm.
Although, like, the bachelor party stuff was pretty. There were some pretty funny jokes in that. That well, now that I think about it, I can't remember if this was left in the theatrical one or not. But the moment where the two girls are like, do you want to watch us kiss? And Jim, Stifler, and Finch just kind of freeze, and they're like, actually, no, we're good on that. Just no, thank you.
We're not doing that. We're not doing that. You do it, and then we do it.
Just the lasting, like, you can tell that of all the crazy things that have happened to them, that actually messed them up a bit. To the point where they're like, let's not think about that.
Right. All right. So,
and I enjoy pretty much every scene in this movie except for the freaking dog thing. Oh my god.
Right. So we are up to the part we just covered the part in the wedding where Stifler wrecked everything by wrecking the flowers, but then he managed to pull it around and actually save the day, if you will, floristically speaking.
I love that the setup to that.
Yeah.
Running to the florist's house and just like banging on her door.
Right.
It's like, hey, I just killed all the flowers. What?
Yeah.
He gives her like the jock like halftime pep talk, and it works. Right. We don't quit at halftime, ma'am. Right. There's like a pause. There's like a beat before the light comes back on, and it's like, shit, he's right.
Yeah.
Well, he basically tells her, okay, you're basically not going to get paid unless the shit gets done right.
I don't think that's what he meant.
Yeah, and I don't think that would have flown anyway. I think she would have been, no, we did the work. We are not doing a refund. I'm pretty sure that's how that would have gone down. But
I mean, the work was basically done. She would have had to have already been paid.
It was done. Yeah.
Yeah, and he brings in the whole football team to get it done in time.
Right.
So that was such a good callback to, like, because you forget, like, at the beginning of the film, like, he's just like a coach at the high school.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like the movie kind of just, lets that go. Like, it's not going to be an important detail, but then it does have some relevance later on.
Right. So so then we get to the part where he theoretically finally gets to the part where he's going to score. He has gained massive brownie points with Cadence. They renew their attempt at a rendezvous, but she gets held up.
And so does he.
What's that?
Well, and so does he.
Yeah. And he ends up running into... Oh, right. He gets held up because Jim wants to do a best man or a bridal party meeting before the wedding. And not bridal party. You know what I mean. He wants to do a best man like meeting. Groomsman wedding. That's groomsman.
That's what it is.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yes.
I don't remember all the terms.
So he basically takes them way out just to thank them. And Stifler's like, that's it? Thanks for nothing, man. He runs away.
Fucking cock block, man. And he just runs away.
Right. And he goes running into the
So there is another joke in that scene that I find myself quoting quite a lot, just in everyday life. And Jim is starting his little speech. He's like, "Well, we're all okay. I'm glad you all made it here today." And Stifler just bursts out, "This sucks." And then everybody kind of looks at him. He's like, "Wait, did I say that out loud?"
Keep going, man. It's awesome. It's like, but then we see. I can't remember who the MILF guys are talking to, but they're like, "Yeah, the old broad sucked. We had to ditch her." So apparently they were on grandma duty, and they decided to ditch her. They put her in a linen closet, and Stifler was going to meet Cadence in a linen closet. And this being an American Pie movie, we know where this is going. He ends up taking one for the team, if you will. And when the wedding starts, Grandma's all smiles.
Fat in her eyes and going, Stifler, and he's like trying to be like, no.
He's like the thing with Jim's dad there is just so like,
and he's going.
It makes you flinch. Like, it's like I've never seen my mother so happy. I bet she's waited for a day like this for. I bet she's waited for a day like this for years. And Kevin, who knows, but Jim's dad doesn't, is like, I can only imagine.
Yeah. And of course, Kevin and Finch are fully aware of what's going on. And this is where Finch is like tweaking Stifler. And Stifler's like, "You motherfucker." And he's like, "I know." Or no. Finch calls him grandmotherfucker. And
you're a motherfucker.
You mother.
Yes, I am.
Nice little callback to that.
I've only seen this one like a dozen or so times, but man, so many of the jokes are so like quotable, like they really stick in my head.
Right. And then, of course, we have the wedding is over. They have the big dances. Jim can actually dance. And I think Stifler does take credit for it, which Jim actually learned from him. Everyone's out on the dance floor. They're having a good time. Finch kind of slips away. And then
because he gets with Stifler's mom.
Well, we go to the she comes up, somewhat of a stretch that she's in the movie when Oz isn't, but she shows up. She's like, "Yeah, I never really liked these things much anyway." And he's like, "Well, we'll always have Paris and the pool table and the car." And she's like, "And the 2-bedroom suite I have upstairs." Then we have the post-credit scene, or the last scene, where John and Justin are skulking around to find her window because they know she's there. They're getting ready to look, and Finch comes up in the bubble bath, and they're all like, "No way, dude!" And then he's like, John Cho's like, "He is the master. He is the master." That is like, so we end on those two somehow. Anyway. So
it's fun to have those two guys just around each time, like somewhere.
It is. But we had the point right at the top of where the hell is Oz. And it is really weird that Oz, Heather, Vicky, Jessica are all gone, but the MILF guys and Stifler's mom are there. It's Nadia and Sherman, not surprising. We didn't need them in this movie. It makes sense that they're gone, and most of the others make sense to varying degrees.
I think Oz is the one who makes maybe like the least sense, but with the rest of those people, like realistically, they're more so Jim's friend, the rest of the group's friends, than Jim's friends specifically. Like, what do Vicky and Jim really have to talk about?
Yeah.
I can't remember them interacting all that much.
And the second movie made clear that Vicky is with someone new. She's no longer with Kevin. he talks about a girlfriend in this movie, but that's as far as they go with that. There apparently was a deleted scene where they said Oz and Heather were in Spain. Something like that. How hard would it be to just say, oh, Oz is in Spain with Heather? How hard would that be? It would make so much more sense than his complete absence. But at any rate, that's pretty much the plot. Did anyone have anything that we missed or that they want to hit real quick before we go into production?
Not that I know.
Okay.
It's hard not to just like try to make a list of just all the lines from this movie that I personally use
Right.
in everyday speech. Like I put serious thought into that letter. Comes up kind of a lot.
Yeah.
I can never tell if he's actually sarcastic or if he's like sincere when he says that, because his delivery is kind of either way, you know. I would be ever so humbled, ever so in your debt, if you taught me how to dance like you did at the gay bar. I put serious thought into that letter. Like he's just like mocking him almost, but oh yeah, this movie has just so much like enjoyable stuff, and I don't want to keep us here all night.
Right. There are a few pretty solid ones. And there were a couple that were a little bit more cringe. So as far as the production goes, personally, I feel like it's kind of on par, maybe slightly below par of the others. Did anyone have any specific thoughts on that? Or
does this one have more locations? Because it sort of feels like it does.
Yeah, I think so. Strangely enough, Dog Years is not actually in this one. But there are scenes at the school. There are scenes at Jim's house. There are scenes in the gay bar. There are scenes in at the wedding venue, the hotel that they used for the wedding. Scenes at the florist. There are a number of scenes of locations. Yeah. So I guess location scouting must have been a pretty big thing for this one. So what do y'all think about the hotel they used for the venue? It's kind of a nice looking place, I would think.
Yeah, it looked pretty nice. Yeah. What I was gonna say about the production, I think we kind of went over the things that we thought about production, like that the bachelor party was a little bit longer than it needed to be, and the doggy scene we kind of went over that ended up being a little bit longer than it should have been too, you know.
Yeah, editing
describe the taste. Like you didn't need to do that.
Editing was not the film's strong point, that's for sure.
Right. I mean, other than those couple scenes, I think the production wasn't too bad. I mean, except for like those areas.
Yeah. And I think direction falls into this too. And we talked before about how apparently Sean William Scott decided to go all in on making Stifler as wild as he could. And the director really should have reined him in, I think, but didn't. And there were a couple of other characters that could have gotten more out of them with a more solid director on the camera. I know, Brandon, you've definitely commented on that. Did anyone else have thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah. I think Stifler should have had a little bit more of a filter on him. Because when you let him run rampant with that mouth of his,
I'm not even
what you're going to get.
I'm not even sure about that. In my case, it's more the mugging. Like he was mugging for the camera. He was overacting big time in this movie. That was my thought on it. I think Sean William Scott can be a decent actor, and I've seen him do it. And I've seen him do better with Stifler. But from the first time I saw this movie, I thought something was off. And I thought he didn't want to be in the movie, but now I understand that he actually wanted to do the movie, and it was probably just more a case of
Excitement.
Yeah, you
Reining
could
him
say
in
that.
from being in front of the camera too much.
What's that?
Reining him in from being in front of the
Yeah.
camera too much.
Or reining him in from being as over the top as he was. Yeah, that's just So other than that, music. Just like the other two movies, this movie has a veritable playlist of songs that were big at the time. As we mentioned, the dance sequence was kind of an 80s playlist and a pretty solid one. You got Van Morrison's Into the Mystic playing during the wedding dance, and I thought that was a nice, appropriately romantic choice. Anyone have any further thoughts on the music?
I mean, I so far all of the ones I've had, they're soundtracks that I would like to listen to because they were what I was listening to in those times. I mean, if you do something with modern music now, it's hit or miss whether I will give a damn.
Right.
But back in my 20s when this came out, that was when I was most into new music or modern music.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, shoot, stuff like Good Charlotte, they were huge back then, and it was kind of cool listening to that and just it's that nostalgia, the feels. I like classic rock.
Right.
That we'll get into next time.
Over the, I think it was either the opening or ending credits. Wasn't there like a Jimmy Eat World song? Like that felt a little bit like of the high school times for our characters.
Well, the one they played over the end credits was by James, and it's a song called "Laid," and we were talking about that one earlier. I don't think there is any. Maybe there's Jimmy Eat World. I don't. Is there?
Well, what's probably happening is that whatever song I'm thinking about just had a very similar sound to it, and I never really listened to a lot of those bands aside from when they were in movies like this, so I could be misremembering some stuff, but I do remember like one or two of the songs felt like they were kind of from like the original era where we met these guys,
right?
Because it was kind of all over the place, wasn't it? Especially with like the Gay Bar Dance Off, where there's just like big dance hits packed in there.
Well, it would be.
Yeah,
that dance off scene is pretty cool. Like I liked their picks for the music in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had what are some of the ones we got? That we had Venus by Bananarama, Maniac by Michael Sembello, Heaven is a Place on Earth by Belinda Carlisle. So actually, some of these were, I think,
Times Like These, Food Fighters.
Yeah.
Good Charlotte.
Was there Good Charlotte? Oh yeah, there was Good Charlotte.
Yeah, Good Charlotte. Yeah,
that could be what I've been calling the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Newfound Glory.
I think I was a little old for that band when it was a thing.
And apparently we had a cover of Into the Mystic by the Wallflowers, who brings in another one of Bob Dylan's sons, Jacob Dylan. But yeah, so it would have made sense, I guess, that they'd fit one in there with the other brother directing. So anyone have any further thoughts before we go into favorites?
Not that I know.
Okay. So we will just start. I'll start on the left here with you, Brandon. Favorite character, favorite scene, and or line?
My favorite character in this one, shoot.
And we'll say as well, go ahead if you want to pick a wedding movie that we need to cover one of these days.
Well, Michelle definitely, I think, as the as favorite character for this one.
Right.
Though I'll give props to Kevin because Kevin really should have had more to do in this movie. The favorite scene. Did I have one in this? I'm sure I did. I let's see. I kind of liked the wedding itself once they gotten things done. That kind of a feeling that yes, they do really care for each other. That at the end, with Jem actually dancing with her and showing her that he cared enough to even to learn how to dance for her to do that at the wedding. I thought that was cool. And favorite wedding one? Well, we haven't covered the Wedding Crashers yet.
A movie that probably owes a debt to this one. Definitely owes a debt to this series, I think. All right. Yes. Ding. All right. How about you, Dave?
Well, I'd have to go with the gay bar scene.
Okay.
It's my favorite scene. I just love the dance moves that Stifler does against Belvedere.
Mr. Belvedere.
Mr. Belvedere.
I didn't figure out that was a reference to something until like 2 or 3 years ago.
But favorite character, you know what? I'm actually gonna go with Shipbreaker this time. I like Michelle and them just fine, but for some reason, the fact that they put Finch doing some of Stifler's antics, that was kind of creative, and I'll give him credit for that. So.
All right. And did you have a wedding or wedding themed movie that you think would be The Wedding Singer? Yeah, that'd be a good one. All right. How about you, Tammy?
My favorite character is Jim because I just feel sorry for him. Everything, it doesn't. Okay, he doesn't seem like he's getting screwed quite as bad in this one as he is in other ones, but it's he tries so hard to do things right and they just always go wrong.
Right.
But then, like his friends say, somehow they do end up working out in the end for him. His friends even made a comment about that.
Right.
Favorite scene. I like the dance one too. So.
Okay.
And unfortunately, like David, I was gonna say Wedding Singer also.
Okay. Well, the you reminded me with Jim. He probably would agree with Sonny, aka Dev Patel's quote from The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. Everything will be all right in the end. If it's not all right, then it is not yet the end. Yeah, it's a good saying. I like that. And Dustin was talking about quotable lines. That's one I've thought about many times. Speaking of Dustin, your favorites, favorite character, favorite moment or scene, wedding movie you would want to see us cover?
Well, like I said, it's hard to pick just one scene because there is so much enjoyable stuff in this. Like the flip they do with both Finch and Stifler are trying to get with Cadence, and they're just being the opposite of themselves to try to see what works better. That whole through line is pretty enjoyable. But if I really had to pick something that I enjoy the most, that's not the dance scene, I think the bachelor party cover up where like suddenly the whole tone of that scene shifts, and it's like, oh crap, okay, everybody pull together. We gotta try to get him out of this.
Right.
It's like, you hired help? Oh my god, Mr. Belvedere. He does the accent.
Yes. Yes.
Like, I can't remember his name, but I think it's Bear. Like,
Bear,
I think Bear would have to be my favorite character in this, because like there's a moment where he's on the couch with the strippers where he's just like, what did we get sucked into? Like, what is wrong? Like, these people are nuts. Like, he doesn't say it, but it's like his face kind of has that expression.
Right.
And I did enjoy seeing him like around later on too. Like, after like they meet him in the bar, and you know, he's a fun character there, and he helps with the bachelor party. And then, you know, when we do our all hands on deck, like with the football team, like he's there helping out too.
Right.
So, you know, despite, you know, being introduced to Stifler and the friend group as, oh, these people are jerks, you know, he ends up coming to their side pretty quickly. And,
Right.
and he's just funny in general too. Like, there's a scene during the bachelor party. I think this is in like the extended version, because it feels like an extended version kind of thing, where he's just like trying on clothes from like the mom's closet, and Stifler's like, and he's just like, what do you think of this? And Stifler's like, what the fuck? And he's like, is the pink top too much? So just stuff like that. But there's so many good jokes in this.
Oh, I didn't realize that dude was the same guy that played Little John in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
He did look very familiar.
Yes, Eric Allen Kramer. But yeah. All righty. And did you have a pick for a wedding-themed movie that you think we ought to hit one of these days?
I feel like I'm the only person in the world who remembers Father of the Bride, just because the trailer was at the start of so many like VHS movies I used to watch.
It was that. Actually, Dave mentioned it earlier, but I've actually seen a stage production of that. They did it at my high school, a stage production of it, and I probably saw that before I saw the movie. It's a pretty fun movie. Yeah. But anywho, for me, I mean, again, obviously Michelle's my favorite, but in this, if we're limiting it just to this movie, I gotta say Bear is probably my second, because he is pretty fun. I did like that character, and he gets a lot to do in the movie. You know, some of the others are pretty cool too, and I like Cadence. She's a little thin compared to what she could have been, but she's fun. But overall, yeah, I'm going to say Michelle, but Bear gets honorable mention. Favorite scenes, again, my favorite scene is where Michelle makes that comment about the monkeys and the tools. That's just so hilarious to me. But the actual wedding scene, I agree with Brandon. There's some genuine feels to be had there, and I do enjoy that. Then needle drop at the very beginning where they play Laid over the Universal credits, and then it segues into the scene. I just love that. That's probably my favorite needle drop in the whole franchise. So there's a few good moments. I'm sure there's a couple more if I were to really think about it, but I'm not going to do that. As far as wedding movies go, I have recently threatened the group with the Father Knows Best trilogy by Ang Lee, the middle of which is The Wedding Banquet. It is a great film that I hope to cover one day, but the one that I had in mind when I put the question up is actually a more recent, well, actually it came out about a year later, so they're almost the same age, but a more recent addition to my collection, so it's fresh on my mind. 4 Weddings and a Funeral would be a really fun one to hit one day too. That was good times. Haven't done that one in some time. But that about does it, I suppose. Wraps up American Wedding. I guess next week we'll be back for one more slice with the reunion. And I'll hand it to you, Dave. Take us out. Dave?
Wake up.
Or not.
Good.
It just had an audio blip. But anyways, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming and joining us this time around. We're definitely going to be finishing up this month with another in the franchise. So stay tuned. Like, share, and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the film and our discussion. And I guess we'll go around and see what other people want to tell about themselves. So, Dustin, why don't you go ahead and tell them a little bit about yourself?
Well, I have a general horror collecting channel on YouTube at The Crypt of Horrors, and I hang out in different social media spaces as Cryptaxis. So eventually I want to change my YouTube channel to Cryptaxis. So, take a search for those and, hang out and talk to me on Twitter or wherever. And we're going to hopefully have some YouTube videos coming out soon for, since we were primarily a collecting channel and there's really no more collecting to be done for many reasons. Got to figure out something new. So, not doing so great on that, but we're going to keep trying. So, yep. Come subscribe and stuff. And, The Crypt of Horrors and Cryptaxis. Just, follow me. Anyway, I'm going to head out. Good night, everyone.
Night.
Good night.
Alrighty. Let's head over to you, Tammy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I go on this channel with David and another one and talk with everybody about the movies and listen to their opinions and check out different films. And I have my own collection. And right now that's about it. And being in Wisconsin, just trying to stay warm.
Yeah, I bet.
It's right now. It says it's -2 with a 17 below wind chill. So.
Well, aren't you glad that you weren't going to wake up like an icicle? But in any case, heading over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm Kotobuki Jake. I am the co-host of SeptumSin versus the World, where this past week we discussed a couple of odd anime, F, A Tale of Memories, and its follow-up, F, A Tale of Melodies. We had rather a lively discussion with people taking very different views of that series. Meanwhile, I do try to do some viewing on my own, and I did get finally to revisit F.W. Murnau's classic vampire film Nosferatu, but for various reasons, I have found it very difficult to get myself to the movies or even to watch the stuff I want to watch. I watch stuff for this channel, and I am very happy to join these folks once a week to talk about movies. But with everything, for one positive thing, I'm trying really, 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 really hard to finally write the novel I've been sitting on for 20 years. So that's taking up a lot of my time. And the rest of my time is spent either working or trying to find ways to muddle through, because this is anyway. So I'm trying to get some viewing done, and hopefully I'll have some fun things to report in the near future. But meanwhile, like so, we got some stuff for this channel, and I guess is it next week that we're doing the City Hunter for our channel?
Yeah, I gotta get that uploaded too.
Yeah, you do, because I don't think I have a copy. So I'll look forward to that. We'll be doing Jackie Chan's version of City Hunter next week on the channel, so that'll be fun. So that'll do for me tonight. No.
Okay, heading over to you, Brandon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
SeptumSin versus the world. Check us out. We do physical media stuff. I finished a 2-year reshuffle of my collection. I'm sure that Jake could attest that things have been very messy in between.
They have indeed.
So that's done, and there is a collection video up. So for those of you who want to see what things look like now, I'm hoping to do more stuff in the future, but we'll see. We'll see how things go.
Okay.
Okay, is that pretty much you're pretty much done?
Yep.
Alrighty. Well, my name is David Streggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore, so thank you for coming along with us on this fantabulous journey we've been having. I guess I've been okay going through the American Pie stuff again, but yeah, at least with American Reunion, when we actually go and do it, that one we didn't do recently, so
Okay.
it won't be as much as shipwreck as I thought it was going to be. At least for me, because this kind of humor is hit or miss for me, and that's why I'm neutral to these movies. But that doesn't mean you have to be. So, but on that note, I do moonlight on a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I do go on and do some various reviews from time to time. But I also podcast on it as well. And I do believe that just recently, we covered The Toxic Avenger on the channel. Hey, we covered it before our channel did. So, or did we cover it here? I was pretty sure that we did not yet.
We have not covered The Toxic Avenger on this channel.
No.
Okay. So, we covered it first. No, just kidding. So yeah, check out that review. And Tammy, did you mention what movie that you wanted us to do this following week?
I'm doing the Comedy of Terrors. Isn't it called?
Oh yeah, the Comedy of Terrors, and that's got Vincent Price and Peter Lorre, and good stuff.
Good times.
So, looking forward to that. So, catch us this Sunday as we cover that. But I have been uploading some new music from time to time, so check out some of my playlists under Drown Out Dark. Some interesting music there, and I believe Brandon, you're helping me release some of these albums, which I believe the links to buying these albums are down below. Correct?
Yep. The first 3 are available, and I'm working on the next 3.
Cool. So. Not only is there movies on the links, but there's music as well as there's music for the illustrious and mysterious AI assholes, which I'm not, I don't even know who they are. Trust me, but they're hilarious. So check some of those musics out. Yeah, I think that's pretty. Still working on the second anthology. Slowly but surely, but as the new year starts, we're well under our way to almost finishing the second installment. So that's where we are. And on that note, everyone say
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
good night.
That I don't see the deep freeze coming back anytime soon. We'll kind of go back and forth, but we'll get the deep freeze out of here, at least for now, by Wednesday afternoon. Please stay warm and take this. Inside movies galore, just makes you just want more. We've had all in the world of media to explore. Horror, anime, or Curious George. Our love of new things was our reward. It is the best night of our week.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.